15
Okay.
hex, actually, so...
Great. Welcome to Fail 2.0. This is a continuation and update to last year's Black Hat Talk. It was one of the better talks I saw there, and we wanted to get an update for you here. So take it away.
Hello, everybody. We're obsessed with animations, by the way. Last time I heard that sound, I had to go to the doctor.
Sure. All right. So yeah, this is, and hopefully you can hear this. This is Fail 2.0. Yeah, like was mentioned, we talked about social networks a little bit at Black Hat and DEF CON, and there was a lot of crap to cover there and a lot of things that we were still kind of continuing to...
A lot more lawyers, too, apparently.
...to think about. So we just, and also a chance to actually know for sure we could get tickets to Shmoocon, because, there was some question about that for a while on the website. Actually, I seriously submitted this the day that the site went down and nobody was sure if they had tickets or not. I'm like, okay, fuck it. We'll just, we'll submit.
So, I'm Nathan Hamill. I'm a senior consultant at IDEA, and I'm sure my boss is going to love seeing this title, but I'm an associate professor at UAT. Founded the Hexagon Security Group, and I'm very easy to find on many popular social networks.
Yeah. And I'm Sean Moyer. I work for a company called Fishnet Security. I've done a couple other Black Hat talks and things like that. Most actively on the Twitter social network, along with Nathan. I think both of us are pretty obsessed with that, but you can find us on various other places. I hate MySpace with a passion. So no animals, bloggers, journalists, or cam whores were harmed during these demonstrations. While actual SocialNet sites and users were involved, all payloads were benign and only resulted in wounded pride and possibly high blood pressure. We are not experts and should not be trusted in any way. Always ask your doctor before changing prescriptions or viewing live journal session captures. No specific social network is intended as the sole object of ridicule, and the problems here are universal. There is much failed to be found and much as of yet unfound. For reals, yo.
And that's how fast we're going to do every single slide through the rest of the presentation.
So yeah, I mean, kind of what this is about, our obsession with social networks, and I mean, I think that we're finding more and more, everybody's got some toehold in some social net or another. We spent a lot of time just kind of actually sitting in my backyard and getting drunk and looking at different things on social networks. Some sort of social experiments on kind of proving out what is possible on social nets. Most of these things, when we initially released a lot of these, we spent a lot of time kind of thinking about whether these were 0-day or not. And there's a couple like that as well now that we're talking about. And basically, kind of our thought was, if you documented it in your API, we wouldn't consider it a vulnerability per se. So you can still be exploited with it, but if it's actually defined in tutorials and you wrote it and put it there on purpose.
You put video demonstrations and how to use it, then probably.
Yeah. So yeah, the things that they put there on purpose. There's one more bullet. But yeah, all of these are still also, very interesting ways to attack via social networks. And I think one of the reasons we wanted to come back and talk about this again is that really in the last 6 or 8 months we've seen a lot of activity in this front. And so I think we're going to continue to see this be a pretty common attack platform. So yeah, social nets as an attack platform.
Yeah. So when you're looking for a juicy target, I mean, social networks are pretty much where it's at. There's going to be millions of people at your disposal. So it seems to be a collecting point for users. So if you're either attacking those users or you're taking advantage of those users and sending requests elsewhere, it's a great place to start. And they have their business model basically off of user-generated content. It's a bunch of stuff that they don't create themselves. So you're putting all this creative power in the hands of users, and we all know how that happens.
Yeah, and so kind of a lot of these things are sort of vulnerability mashups. You look at both the very open kind of platform that you have, and also this collection of users with various degrees of cluefulness, and you kind of bring all these together, and there's a lot of sort of return on investment for attackers. So that's really what's kind of interesting about social networks, is they're really meant to get as many people as possible in one place, all using that platform, and so you've got a lot of value if you can attack via that platform.
We also looked at some open social stuff, and this was a lot newer, like 6 months ago, but we looked at attacking basically anybody who would install apps. So these social network apps that people are going crazy, they don't realize that you completely trust the person when you install that social network application. So you can pretty much completely own any user who owns your application. You can attack apps with other apps, and there's a demonstration of that. So what they've been doing is throwing all of these apps in a different domain to protect themselves, but nobody's doing anything to protect the other app owners from the other apps.
Yeah, and that kind of comes to the concept of using a social network as sort of a lightweight botnet. If you have a social network app that's under your control and you have a few 100,000 installs, you have essentially execution flow control of what's going on in that user's browser. And actually, one of the points to make about that too is, even if you yourself don't install a given social network app, if you view somebody else's profile that has the app installed, they're still executing that on the canvas in the context of your browser. So it doesn't just apply to the people that install a given app. Just using the social network and having other people on your connection list that use it.
Not only that, if you're logged into the social network and you visit somebody with an app installed, that app, if your privacy settings aren't set, has visibility into your entire profile. So not good if you care about privacy at all. And of course, turning a social network into sort of a lightweight botnet. And that can be done either with apps or without. And we'll kind of get into that a little bit too. So when talking about offsite content, if you own a site, any kind of site, and you allow people to link to things off of that site, basically you're pretty screwed.
Own
because
is in you're the operator of the site, not the site getting owned, but just owning it.
Yeah, so if you allow people to link to offsite content, you lose control of that request. Is this feeding back?
Yeah. You get a little Jimi Hendrix vibe going on.
Okay, well, I'll try not to do as many drugs and pass out and die. So if you allow people to do that, you lose control over that request. Like, you have no control where it goes after it leaves your site. So you can do things like CSRF through image tags. You can sometimes do JavaScript-y type things depending on whether you care about same origin or not. And there's a lot of sites that allow you to do that. Of course, the big one is MySpace. You can link, and that's why people's profiles all look like shit. It's because they're linking to these CSS pages that are complete crap. So, if they did have the magic bit where they could flip that say, we're no longer, linking to offsite content, immediately millions of MySpace pages would actually be digestible. And you could actually see what's on their profile page. It's like, oh my God, that was actually a woman?
The web would become a much better place, and really, a lot of the social networks. We mentioned, like, in particular, High Five, LiveJournal, and MySpace, which are three pretty high-profile social networks with a lot of members. A lot of their business model is on allowing you to kind of create your own content and giving you your own platform to do that. And so, essentially, if you let people write their own markup and you can link off-site, even if you just, and there's various restrictions they place on that, but really, at the end of the day, which we'll get to, if you give us the ability to make a request off-site, it's under our control at that point. So really, a lot of these things, until they really change that model, it's not gonna get fixed.
There's also some things too where you can actually do same site request forgery if you have the ability to write content. So there's no need to send the request off of the site. You have control over content on the site, and what that also does is give you a higher success rate, because I don't have to guess whether you're visiting the page if I'm an attacker. I don't have to guess whether you're visiting or not. I know you visited it because it's on the page. So it pretty much gives you a 100% success rate when you're talking about request forgeries. And then you have certain validated entities. If you're using a view state and you're not validating it, you're probably going to get screwed by it because you probably assume you're being protected. And we have a demonstration of that too.
And as far as like post to get, one of the things that we found is, in particular in the Open Social API, they sort of allow for both, and MySpace in particular, and a lot of these sites allow for kind of both methods. The reason it gets more useful is that you can do it with things like an image tag. You don't have to have XML HTTP request or JavaScript, in the context of the browser. Just a simple image tag will get you the same kind of thing that we would normally use all kinds of other kung fu to get to.
Now, these three MySpace profiles no longer exist, so don't go looking for them because they were deleted shortly thereafter. But we're going to give a scenario here. So we have three friends. We have Alice, Bob, and Eva. And they all kind of don't get along, but Eva's a friend whore, and she wants as many friends as she can get. So this is a little hard to read. But what this is, and this is something that we didn't show at Black Hat, but this is the code that was used. And all it is it's a small piece of Python code that performs a redirect. So it just prints off the headers to the screen and then sends this data. That victim site thing is actually a get URL with a view state and a bunch of crap that looks like nothing. But so let's talk about this. We have Eva, and she's friends with Bob. And we have Alice, who's friends with Bob as well. Now, of course, Bob is friends with both Alice and Eva. This is painfully slow. So now Eva wants Alice to be on her friends list. But Alice doesn't like Eva, so of course he wouldn't friend her intentionally. So she goes to Bob's profile, and she puts in a 1x1 pixel image tag and just says, thanks for the ad, because that's like common social network behavior.
The kids today say this on the internets. They say thanks for the ad.
So she's just going to post a comment, and of course the ultra secure CAPTCHA that protects you from everything, right? And as you can see, you don't see the image tag rendering, because it's rendering to you in HTML as well, which if you're going to DOS somebody, you can accidentally DOS yourself by doing this too.
We'll get to that.
So boom, that's posted. So if, when Alice goes to just go to visit Bob's MySpace page, as you can see, he goes and visits. And there's Eva. It says, thanks for the ad. No indication that there's any kind of attack going on from the user perspective. So when we refresh Eva's page, she's got a new friend request. And it's Alice.
Yeah.
So all that was done through not validating your view state when you're collecting all that information.
And linking, essentially.
Linking to offsite content, rendering of HTML and comments, and also allowing either a request, because that was originally a post,
right,
and just got transformed into a get, which made it a lot easier to pull this attack off.
So you have an offsite link to an image tag that, as far as their servers are concerned, even if they do validation, which they don't, but even if they did validate the actual HTML that you're dropping in there, and I think they do scrub like certain tags, really that looks like a perfectly legitimate thing. It's just an image tag.
Yeah, on top of that, it was a .py extension, but it didn't have to be.
Yeah, they did.
It was just it was just to demonstrate. It could have been anything going to a redirect. It could have been image.gif, spacer.gif, which is something that wouldn't set off too many flags. And then that goes to a redirect. That gets redirected back to that.
So once the client views that image tag that's in the HTML bounces to another server. That server sends a redirect, sends a 302 that actually just calls, essentially, just uses CSRF to hijack that function.
There's certain things we brought up about innocuous functions. A lot of people know when they develop applications, they know that certain things are important, like account functions, change password, send messages, read messages, things like that. But there are certain things that people don't typically think of as being important when they build web applications. Things like logging out or blocking communications and many of these other little innocuous functions. And what you can really do is take advantage of those to cause damage to the site that's allowing that. So what this is much shorter and much easier to understand, but it's a simple redirect that just redirects to a domain that isn't working anymore, but that needs to be modified. It used to be collect.myspace.com. It's just myspace.com, fuse action log out now. So that right there is much simpler to pull off. So if you wanted to DOS somebody off of their profile, now Eva, she's a little upset at Bob because he made some rather irritating remarks towards her. So she wants to make sure that Bob and everybody that views Bob's profile can no longer use it correctly. So she goes to Bob's profile, and she does the same thing. So she pastes a little message that says, "You're a douche," with a 1x1 image tag again. Now at this point right here, it rendered, so if Eva wasn't sneaky and blocking collect.myspace.com, she would have been logged out at this point.
You'll actually DOS yourself as well. Yeah.
Which actually happened in the first demonstration video, which is why it had to be done again.
Yeah.
He mentioned we were drinking, right, when we were doing this. So now, the funny thing about MySpace is when you go to view your view your comments from your homepage, they render in HTML as well, and that's also where you'd have to delete that comment from. So anywhere Bob goes, he's logged out. Anybody that views Bob's profile is logged out as well. And this can get way worse. If you think about the context of doing this, what if you dropped that on somebody's page and then blocked all communication with everybody that visited that profile page, and then sent off a message to everybody's friends, hey, I created a new profile, something was wrong with my profile. You wouldn't be able to communicate with the person, so unless you knew them in real life, which may or may not, you'd never know that wasn't them. So they could create a whole new, set of friends and everything else. You could take over somebody's page.
This is K-lining 2.0.
Yeah.
So, and along that line, did anybody see Jason Scott's talk? I guess it was last year that he mentioned there was apparently some kind of goatsy battle related to textfiles.com. I have one thumbs up. So basically, like, there's these douchebags that make these, make your custom CSS on MySpace, pages. And this guy linked to a graphic that was on text files. And so Jason has, like, thousands and thousands of hits going to this graphic. And, he emails the guy and says, hey, would you, or posts on their forum, hey, would you, not link directly to this, like copy it and put it onto another site or whatever. And the guy says, haha, it's the internet, you can't make me. And so what Jason did was just send a 302 for that image, which is on 70,000 people's MySpace profiles, to go to Goatsy. And so really, actually, like, social network as botnet, or as GoatsyNet in this case, we'll have to give credit to Jason Scott for that. But anytime you have an image or anything else that's in your control, if there's offsite content that's linked to, at the end of the day, you have a free GET request. You can do whatever you want with it.
So basically, no JavaScript, no problem. You don't need JavaScript to pull off a lot of these attacks. There's a couple of ways to do it right there. Using an image tag, using meta tags, using an iframe. You can, if you have control to be able to add those tags, then you're good to go. So let's talk about this for a second. Cross-site request forgery doesn't have to be on a internet-facing site for the most part. I was talking with Martin one night. I don't even know if he's in here. Over IM, and I'm like, wow, I just found out I could take control of all these AT&T DSL modems who are made by Motorola and Netopia. And we were kind of laughing about it. I'm like, one request. And I was like, I can set remote admin to any password I want to. And he's like, are you going to report it? I'm like, no, I think I'm just going to put it in my blog and see if anybody notices. A few people noticed, a lot more than I thought would, because this is a dumb vulnerability. This shouldn't even happen. It's not like you had to be elite and reverse engineer crap. It's just transforming a request from a post to a GET and then sending it back in an image and enabling permanent remote access. And there was some people asking me, like, well, in the grand scheme of things, like, how is that really bad? I mean, how is it bad? You have control over the routing device. You can do anything you want. You're totally owned. So, and if you think about the context of this, if you're like on a branch location from some major corporation and you're VPNing into the corporate network, you may have one of these DSL modems sitting on your network, and that's bad. Yeah. So there's more information. The blog link is right there, and we'll have the slides posted so you can get it out there if you really want a couple of laughs, if you want to get some lulls at their expense.
And so the same kind of deal. I mean, if you have comments on a social net, or you have a web page you get a lot of people to go to, or you do it via Fish or whatever, that a third of the United States that has broadband has this device. So you've got pretty good odds of hitting somebody with that.
So it's a comment, leaving a comment on somebody's MySpace page can like totally own their DSL modem.
Somebody lost an iPhone. It's in a black leather case. Please bring it to us, is actually what the message was. Just bring it by and we'll take a look at it.
Actually, the message said, Sean, you're hot.
It did. I appreciate that. Actually, it said take it to Charlie Miller. I'm not really sure why.
Charlie Miller just dropped a note. So let's talk about some logic attacks. Logic attacks are interesting because they're not easy to defend against from a device perspective. So if you're counting on your WAF to protect you against stuff like this, it's probably not going to happen. And they're not always straightforward to identify. Extremely difficult, too, to identify through testing unless you have experience testing web applications or applications in general. So let's talk about another social network called Adult Friend Finder. It's a social network, and it also allows for paid-for content. So if you want to take full advantage of the site and get down, you need to cough up that credit card number.
Yeah. Well, and we had kind of a hard time kind of figuring out where to draw the line with social networks, because really now at this point everything has some aspect of social, social component. So like, your blog is friends with my blog, or your modem is friends with my modem, whatever. So ultimately we decided that Adult Friend Finder was a social network. It's just that friending, the action of friending, is sort of a much more intimate activity than it is on your typical network.
So here's what this is an example of is you can't view people's profiles without paying. And this was a free account that I created. Not this. I'm viewing paid for content at the moment. You're only supposed to be able to view one webcam at a time with a free account, and obviously there's more open. I realize it seems like I spend a lot of time on Adult Friend Finder, and the reason why these are all blurred out is because I don't want you to see my screen name.
Yeah. These were purely for research purposes.
Yeah, we kind of saved you. I'm running no script, so I'm safe, right? For some, I should have just airbrushed out the no script too and made you wonder what all the yellow was. It's like, what is he like? What did he sign up for?
Okay. Okay, so to me, one of the things that's really, like I said, kind of interesting about social networks is there's very much a convergence of social engineering and the social aspect, and then there's also so much bad technology as well. So, like I said, it's a really great return on investment for an attack. I sort of call it like diamond tip spear phishing. So if you wanted to target, if you think about social networks, and actually, just recently, which it's funny because we were talking about this a while back, and it turns out that Facebook actually freaking did it. I said like a while ago that social networks are like great. They're basically like people are creating focus groups for you for free. So all of your friends and all of your connections are all in the same geographic area. They all went to the same college. If you want to market and find out, how many people in Des Moines, Iowa drive Subarus, Facebook has that information, right? So they're now selling that to various like advertising agencies as this very focused, directed kind of marketing. But by the same token, it's very great for very focused, very directed attacks. So especially to me, especially LinkedIn, which is business social networking site, if I want to go after a specific company or a specific target group, they're already kind of glommed together. So they're already kind of sitting there just waiting to be owned. So essentially what we did is run through, create a plausible persona on a social network. And the two scenarios we're talking about here are on LinkedIn. Create a respectable number of connections. And essentially that just means we just friended as many people as we possibly could to see who would add us. And then, really a real attack, this is really just to show what was possible. In a real attack, obviously, very simple. It would be, most likely just a phish. If you had a social network app that was under your control, you could get people to visit your profile, attack via that app. Just an email, really, from somebody on your connection list saying, hey, check out this new link, or here's my new blog, or whatever, would probably be sufficient, right, to get a pretty good return. So this is the Marcus experiment that we did. And there's a newer one that we just worked on after that. But Marcus ran him, sort of the father of the firewall, among other things, and a resident of this geographic area, I believe. We thought what was interesting about this was there's sort of on social networks there's very much like the cool kids, and there's these economies of how many connections you have versus somebody else, and so somebody who's a luminary. In the security field, we wanted to see kind of how many security people would want to connect with this person. So what we did was just basically sit down. If you go out to Wikipedia, you have Marcus's resume. There's press releases for every company that he's ever worked for. We took a photo from a PR release from like a conference that he did, and then we just set up a profile on LinkedIn for him. And we did ask permission. We asked Marcus if this was okay. We actually asked a bunch of people, and most of them said, "Are you freaking insane?" But Marcus was pretty cool about it, actually. So, So yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I almost gave away the spoiler.
No, it's okay. You can't read it from there. So yeah, the end result of that was in about 24 hours, we got about 50 plus connections. We got the CISO of a Fortune 10 corporation on our connection list. He was pissed. There's a number of other like CEOs, CIOs, CTOs, and things like that. I really kind of a editor-in-chief of a major security trade publication. And all these people thought they were talking to Marcus. And what was really cool about it is, Marcus would add them, and they'd be like, "Oh, Marcus, it's great to hear from you again. Here's my phone number. Give me a call. I want to tell you about this new product that I'm working on. Hey, can you send me an email?" But my personal favorite was this, the graphic down at the bottom. I got this request. Like once we started to kind of get Marcus kind of public, we started getting people adding us, and I mailed Marcus back. I said, I don't know who this is. It says that she went to college at the same college that you did. So is it like an old girlfriend or something? And he goes, "No, it's my sister." So yeah, that was kind of unfortunate. I went through another scenario last week, kind of targeted at the Shmoocon audience here. Amber Norton, this was a profile I set up. She's a recruiter for the senior director of the federal practice for tech systems in Boston. I have no fucking idea if tech systems has an office in Boston or not. I just went for like all the douchiest IT firms that I'd ever dealt with, like kind of made her resume from that. So
he hopes he doesn't need to use them sometime to get a job, apparently.
Apparently not. Yeah. So so she's a director of the federal practice, and if you read her profile, and I know you probably can't see it, it says that she's a director of the federal practice looking for TS and SCI cleared candidates, and she's recruiting for people in the defense industry, and she has lots of hot positions for top candidates to fill, which is like the classic douchebag recruiter on LinkedIn that you get connection requests from all the time. To make her a little more plausible working in the federal space, like down below here, like about around what would have been like her high school, post-high school, pre-college kind of years, I made her a SATCOM operator for some battalion, and I'm a civilian, I don't know any of this shit, so I found somebody else's resume in the 123rd Battalion SATCOM Division, and that's why she had a TSSCI, Actually, pop back real quick. So then I went out and added all of the social groups that are on LinkedIn that are like these business networking groups, because once you connect to a group, then you can connect to other members in that group, and so you can kind of target that group. So I joined the top secret clearance group, U.S. government security clearance, the DoD clearance group, Shmoocon. They'll take anybody. IT security.
Yeah, they have no standards whatsoever.
None.
It's like a drunk guy at a bar. He'll go home with any woman that talks to him.
The Cleared Pro network and all of this, and this was like less than 24 hours, so I got about 120 odd, 130 odd connections, so from there was about a million people or so that she had a second degree connection with from all of these groups. So then I just started going through and searching for, like, you can search by geography and stuff. So I was like Washington D.C. Metro defense industry, and just started adding people and looking for people with the keyword of clearance or whatever. And then I started posting job postings. So. Seeking penetration. I would click that, and actually, from what I'm told, I'm actually below market here is kind of why I didn't get as much response. I said only 100K a year for TSSCI pen testers, and so I guess that's kind of but I actually did get some responses from that. I didn't get as many as I wanted to, so I caved, and I posted this to all of these clearance groups that I joined. So after that, I went ahead and posted a second one looking for MCSEs with TSSCI. So from that, we got about 50 of those connections, so those 120 had some level of clearance. One of those people is the CISO of a 3-letter agency. You can ask me later which one, or at least I think he is. I don't really know if it's really him, right? It's just some guy with a profile on LinkedIn. Lots of Booz Allen Hamilton people on LinkedIn. I just thought I would point that out. But this guy was my personal favorite, and he was, I think, in response to the MCSE stuff, but he mailed me and said, "Here's my phone number, give me a call." And he says, "I have an interim C6 clearance, is that good?" And I don't actually know if that's good or not. I think it's bad that I got a phone number from this guy. Kind of along that line, other sort of social network, social issues. You can pop one slide. So Alex Sotorov is on Twitter. And I follow Alex. He hasn't followed me back because I'm not that cool. But Alex posted on Twitter, he was in the midst of having a conversation with somebody over direct messaging. So like when you use Twitter, you DM people. And there's actually a website called dmfail.org that has, a list of all of these messages that people meant to send as a direct message that end up in the public timeline. So he said, the situation is complicated. I'm about to apply to SFO. You can reach me at blah, 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 blah. And he had his cell phone number. And that goes out to the public, the public timeline on Twitter. Right after that, he says, everybody who saw that tweet with my phone number, yeah, go ahead and call, if you're, if you're bored. It was supposed to be a direct message, and then he deleted it. But the problem is with Twitter, there's all of these other Web 2.0 sites that take and archive all of that content. So once you DM, it's out there forever, whether you delete it or not. So this is still, you can search on various Twitter sites and get Alex's cell phone number. So
Not to mention, it's really fun to go on the public timeline and troll the shit out of people because they're talking about nothing of any substance. It's like, thank you for boring the shit out of the internet. Now go commit suicide.
So along that line, this is some fresh fail. This is less than 24 hours ago. I had somebody mail this to me. I thought it was pretty neat. Pete Hoekstra.
Wasn't it Charlie told you about it?
Yeah, Charlie Miller sent this to me. He's like, hey, you should use this slide. I said, why, yes, we should. So Pete Hoekstra is, I guess, a Republican congressman from Minnesota, and he's on a junket to the Green Zone, and apparently has Biden with him, like on the chopper. And he touches down and publicly on Twitter, and this is not supposed, you're not supposed to announce that you've just landed in Iraq with the vice president. And he's tweeting, hey, cool, I've got BlackBerry service here. So, so it's all over the, I guess, the news and all that kind of stuff now.
Well, Open Social. Open Social is a social networking apps framework that many social networks, including MySpace, have adopted. And this was when they first started pushing the Open Social apps. They had this accessorize your profile. So I just thought it was funny to do what it really was. So one of the things we thought about is, everybody's trying to find XSS on all these social networks. They need to, there's like, we have to have JavaScript. So kind of took a different approach. I just sent a message to them basically saying, hey, can I execute JavaScript? And they came back a day later and said, yes, here you go. And here's your API keys, and here's your server secret. Go ahead, go to town. So there was, and if they would have looked at all the contact information I provided, I put my real name at my domain, which was my blog, and then the company I put was Hextech. So if they would have went to any of those websites, they would have saw this big thing. Hey, we're speaking at Black Hat on hacking social networks. They would have definitely raised some eyebrows. But apparently the OK button is just too tempting to press when you're doing that stuff.
And the application that was in the little request, it says what application are you working on. So it said a encryption application.
Yeah, it was like I was trying to think of the most ridiculous thing I could put in there, and I said working on an ultra secure messaging framework based on ROT 13. And apparently that's secure to MySpace, which if you've seen some of the stuff they do, it really is. But an interesting thing about social network apps, especially like Open Social, because it's used in so many places, if you write one malicious application, you then now have the framework to install it on High Five and all these other places that are using Open Social. And it doesn't have to be malicious at first, especially if you think people are going to look at it, because MySpace apps are JavaScript. I mean, the devs can look at it at any time, at least your hooks, your initial hooks. So you could get like a large number of installs and then one day basically make it malicious.
Flip the switch.
And not too long ago, Facebook had released this thing called Verified by Facebook, where you submit your application, you pay them amount of money, and then you can display this badge, Verified by Facebook. And I'm like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. You're going to get people owned even worse because they're going to look at it at one point in time, and now you're providing assurances to people that the app is safe, and the dev can change it at any time. And it's even worse on Facebook because most of it just gives you the interface, and all the stuff is sitting in PHP on somebody else's server that's not sanitizing input and checking to make sure you're not doing SQL injection and all that stuff.
So is everybody, have some idea kind of what Open Social is or somewhat familiar with it? I mean, basically like Facebook kind of came out front of all the other social networks because of their application platform. So that brought a lot of users to their site. And so all of the other social nets kind of got together and went, oh shit, we need to come up with a framework. So they came up with this common framework.
It's a Google working group. It's actually Google stuff. It's used in Orkut.
Yeah.
Another thing about social networks is they put all these apps in a different domain. So what they're worried about is, app devs calling document.cookie and getting session data, which would be bad to them. So they basically stick all these apps in their own domain, which is really interesting when you want to attack somebody else's application and call their built-ins from your code. So since it's JavaScript, depending on how your app renders on the canvas, you can call other apps built-ins. Like I was messing with this app called Kiss Me app, and I was injecting my face into the thing. So it's like, you have been kissed by, and for some reason I couldn't get the image to go properly, so it's cutting off half my face, so I look like a weirdo. I think we pulled that out actually, but. So that's it, Yeah. So the EULA tells people, we didn't write these apps, right. You're on your own, but you're publishing them, and it looks like it's coming from you. So, Joe average user doesn't read EULAs anyway, and especially ones that are that long. And, they think that this stuff is safe because it's being published. They don't understand. Not only do you friend the person, but you give them access to all of your information. So if you're putting something on a social network, there's nothing private about that. You should assume that even though you put privacy settings in place, that they're going to be screwed. So anything you put on a social network is public information. So same origin, you may not care. If you're an attacker, you may not care about same origin. It may not be in your, you may not even worry about it. If you're going to deploy malware to people, if you're going to, get people to take actions, you may not care about getting their session data or even their password for that matter.
Why do I care about document cookie if I can just use a botnet dropper and sniff your password off of your browser in the first place, right?
And you can create any GET or any post you want to. So you can basically tell them, hey, send data to whitehouse.gov or, so it just depends on your goal. So here's an example of just the same origin stuff. There was an app I was developing called Pants Status, and the only reason is so that it could have a down message, say Pants Status currently down. It's really dumb, but it's the only legitimate application that wasn't malicious that was built. So it's the only one that still exists, actually. And it just set a simple cookie, and that is actually an application that no longer exists on the MySpace network called Sea Surfer. I wonder what that does. And so that's basically Sea Surfer reading the cookie that was set from Pants Status. We also came across this thing called relay.proxy, and it's named different things, I guess, in different implementations of OpenSocial. So what it does is it makes a request on behalf of the client. And you can make a request anywhere, and what ends up in the destination logs is the person's IP address. So if you go to whatismyip.com and you forge a request to that, it's actually the person who has the web browser. So, and that's part of OpenSocial, and the right there to go to hexsec.com, that won't work because the API keys changed. But the cool thing about that is everybody needs to be able to read it. So all you do is just snag some other social network app's key, and you're off to the races. Yeah. And here's an example of that. That IP address right there is actually that one's not. That's the IP address of one of the
right.
systems on MySpace's network that made that request. So another thing that we were just looking at yesterday, because we're very last minute people, is LinkedIn also uses OpenSocial, and they're much more picky about who they let publish apps. So one of the funny things about OpenSocial is it makes it really easy to enumerate things like development versions of things. So here's the Huddle Spaces applications development environment. It's very active right now, as you can see, as an empty canvas, but it just says this application will rock your world. Well, I'm not very impressed.
Well, and so basically the way that they've allocated all of these is there's an app ID field, which is, I think, kind of part of the API, but the way that LinkedIn has done it, they're allocating that.
Whenever hacking social networks, make sure you're logged in as yourself.
Outstanding.
Oops.
So they allocate, some numeric range. So you can just go through. If you look at an app that you have installed, you'll see an app ID. You can just enumerate through that and find all the other instances of those apps.
Really quick, Kaha is a framework meant to make JavaScript more safe. In OpenSocial, as far as like MySpace in particular, because that's the one I know the most about. It's a bit that you flip. So it's opt-in security. So if you have opt-in security, it never works. Because if I'm an attacker and I'm writing a malicious app, I'm obviously not going to opt into the security framework that doesn't let me pull off the attacks that I'm trying to attack.
I mean, and Kaha in and of itself is a good concept. I mean, the idea of it is to sort of, I always say, like JavaScript on the short bus. it's meant to kind of take out some of the dangerous functions out of JavaScript. But the problem with everything that we looked at was nobody was enforcing that by default.
I think nobody knew what the hell Kaha was.
What the
It's
hell
like,
is that
ooh,
thing?
because it doesn't even say use Kaha. It says use hold code. And it's like, what the
nobody
hell
wanted
does
their-
that mean?
nobody
I'm
wanted
not
their
calling any coals.
Their code Cahold, yeah. So a couple of things since the last time that we looked at this. Some guys and some researchers in Cyprus did a proof of concept on Facebook of like social network apps as botnet. They called it Facebot, and basically what they did was they created an app. They went through the scenario that we were kind of nervous about going through, and they created a social network app called the Image of the Day, and they set it up and got, I think, something like 100,000 installs on the app. And then they flipped a switch and started sending a web bug with it so that they could track those requests. And so at any given time, and if you go out and you Google for that term, they actually have a paper and they show like the amount of clients they would have had control over. And basically what their conjecture was they would have had, a botnet, to rival, the Stormworm or anything else, trivially by just the way they did it was it was the image of the day and it had like a picture of a puppy or a kitten or whatever, and everybody wanted that on their Facebook page.
Yeah, that's exactly what I want on my Facebook.
I do. Puppies, absolutely.
Recently, you may have seen where there was some news stories about LinkedIn profile serving malware. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, man. And I actually got irritated at people on Twitter talking about it. I was like, quit spreading that crap. Basically, what they did was Beyonce Knowles on her LinkedIn page says, click here to visit, to see my nudes. Yeah. People still fall for that. I was like amazed. I'm like, wow, people still fall for that. I was like, and what is Beyonce doing on LinkedIn? I thought definitely isn't finding talent there.
If Beyonce
learning how to sing.
If Beyonce is going to send you nude photos, she will probably do it through a direct message rather than just linking on her profile.
We're gonna go through some of this
message.
stuff. Yeah, there was a CSurf and OAuth.
Yeah, actually, it's real quick on Facebook and 419 scams. Something that we're starting to see a lot of is people hijacking. They'll fish somebody, hijack their Facebook account, and then send out messages saying like, "Oh shit, I'm trapped in a jail in Nigeria. Quick, wire me money." And it's working, which is really terrifying.
So like you have tons of friends that just go to Nigeria all the time. It's like, what are they doing down there? Getting blood diamonds?
I updated my Facebook status, and had a couple friends do this. Send out a message to all your friends saying, "I'm not traveling to Nigeria anytime in the near future." Just let them know.
It was Facebook XSS, some celeb phishing on Twitter. A lot of these too. So this is a banner attack on MySpace. Basically, somebody found out that they could bypass the MS Splink stuff, which is the protection mechanisms that tells you, big warning, you are about to go to an external site and you're probably going to get owned. So they basically found out that they could use whitespace to get around that, which I think still works. What they didn't realize is they probably could have had JavaScript. So they could have really done some damage, but all they were interested in was getting people to download an executable. And I guess they got so used to people seeing the malicious software removal tool, they just kind of hooked onto that meme.
Yeah, if you see that on your Mac, it might be an issue.
Yeah. So if you want to partake in the social network experience, but you're not too keen on apps, what you can do is block app content. Some sites make it easier to block than others. So like MySpace and LinkedIn and all these, they have a separate domain completely. So you can just block that entire domain. And it stops from like click fraud, CSurf, malicious scripts. Facebook's a little different. It'll render the first part of the app in a div tag on the page. So that can be a problem. This is a Firefox extension called CSurf Blocker. I just started writing this, and it's not available yet. And one of the reasons I decided to write this is most people don't really know how Firefox works. And there's a lot of misconceptions out there, especially about blocking content. Because sometimes, even like Grease Monkey will parse the DOM first and send the request. So if that's for CSurf, you're going to be owned at that point once your browser makes the request. It doesn't matter that it won't display on the page. And even AdBlock Plus now is making the request. It's just not showing you the ads, which if you're using AdBlock Plus, that's probably what you want. You just don't want to see the ads. So here's the canvas and some of the preferences. So there's enable warnings, so it'll log when it detects something. Some other things too is you can block all local IP addresses, and you can also do things too like remove links to any blocked sites you have, and you can specify image tag and iframe heights and widths. So if something is rendering in a 1x1 pixel image or an iframe, it's probably even if it's not doing CSurf, it's probably doing something that you don't want. So it'll, and I'm still going through this. I've never developed a Firefox extension before, and every time I start something like this, I realize just how bad I hate JavaScript and how much I've been spoiled by Python. Hexsec Labs, it's on that page, and the presentation will be posted on Hexsec shortly after it gets exported to a PDF. So, not just for CSurf. I'm also working on a concept with page and cookie isolation, and that'll be on there. So here's our recommendations. Kill external content, because that's how people have been getting owned, and click fraud and all that stuff. The API functionality, like MySpace, actually extends Open Social, because it wasn't bad enough to begin with for the privacy issues. They had to create a My Open Space that allows you to have access to much more information.
Yeah, threat modeling, I mean, a lot of these things just seem like nobody had even thought, like, how could this possibly be bad? Like, where did, that security conversation happen? Actually, something on LinkedIn is, they waited, and they kind of waited till the rest of the, the rest of the early adopters got kind of beat up first, and their Open Social implementation, and we spent a bunch of time looking at it just lately, is a lot more solid, and I think that's the right thing to do. I mean, MySpace really just wanted to be the first to relaunch with this stuff.
I see people are saying they're leaving on Twitter. That's really funny. So, yeah, show everybody how to attack shit, but when you tell people how to protect shit, they just walk out of the presentation.
So, yeah. Developers, a lot of this, especially on the social networks where they let you write your own applications, I mean, this can continue to be a problem because you make it far too easy for people to write really bad code. Something on the impersonation stuff is, on eBay, there's if you look at eBay profiles and things like that, there's something that identifies somebody as having just created the account, and then you look at their feedback rating and you see, okay, they've only been here for like a week, right? So I'm going to be like less trustful of this person. But on a social network like LinkedIn or any others, really, there's nothing to identify that person just showed up yesterday, built up 500 friends, and then started phishing. So to me, like, you should have some kind of like member since, blah bit on all of those profiles. It would be a really easy way to identify.
However, from an ultimate, protection from that doesn't work, because you could just set profiles up months ahead of time.
Yeah.
But
true.
it's helpful for that short term.
It would raise the bar at least a little bit. Also on the corporate social network stuff, it specific to LinkedIn, to me, you should have. I shouldn't just be able to say what company I work for, or that I have a clearance, or that I have this or that. There should be some kind of validation of that's taking place, especially for like the business social networking.
Okay, I didn't see any questions, just comments on Twitter. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to either ask them now, ask them later, Twitter them, whatever you want.
I'm actually really hurt that this was actually a zero Shmooball talk. I expected at least,
He's never spoken at Shmoocon before. It's not fun to get launched at. Like when your exploit doesn't work and you're on stage, and everybody's waiting to see that Windows box owned. That sucks.
So
Shmoocon 1 happened to us. I verified it like as I'm standing there. I'm like, good, it works. And then the VMware system crashed. I'm like, screw it. That's why we do videos, because the videos don't fail.
Yeah, we get to fail a bunch of times beforehand. So, any questions, comments, ridicule, bomb threats? Is that a bomb threat back there? Shoot.
Who would you suggest would be the authorizing body for something like LinkedIn to validate all of that?
So actually, here's what's happening. The bigger corporates are actually paying for that. So like if you're IBM, you pay to have a footprint on LinkedIn, and they actually have like something resembling validation there. So I think companies that are big enough would pay for that, but I don't know. I don't know what their process is going to be. I think that's what's going to happen first, is that some people are going to have to get massively owned through it, and then they'll figure some method to do something about it. So.
And we'll be walking around too, so if you have any other questions, and hexsec.com if you want the presentation and stuff. Hey, awesome. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Did you hear about Informer? It's a newsletter Danny Long started out.
Hey, thanks, man. Appreciate it.
I'm Agent 0x0.
Right, okay, cool. Yeah.
Love the research you guys do.
Well, and hopefully, turn off.
Maybe if you have any content, white papers, anything, and check it out.
Yeah, I got. Thanks, man.
Hi.
Hey.
My name is Al Kadrinsky. I'm from the University of Buffalo.
University.
And I have an online radio show. You can look it up to verify me while I'm here.
No, that's fine. I'm very trusting. You feel free to own me because I'm not gonna catch it.
I'm not going to own you. What I'd like to do is interview you and your buddy.
Yeah, sure.
And
That's fine. I'm not giving out any personal information. Like I said, is it recording still? They're gonna cut that off anyway. Gotcha. I'm actually a professor at UAT as well. I teach in Michael's class. That's Tempe, Arizona. Hey man. Hey, no problem. Probably the sooner the better because once.